Before we get started, hit the comments and tell me where you're watching from and what time it is over there. Whether you're catching sunrise in Nairobi, burning midnight in New York, afternoon in Canada, or evening in France, I want to hear from you. Don't just watch silently, let me know where in the world you are. Now let's dive into the story. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead in the stark, gray room, casting sharp shadows across the cold concrete floor. Mara Solverson sat on the thin metal bench, wrists shackled to a rusted chain, her eyes fixed on the tiny window high above the door. The seconds dragged like hours. Outside, the early morning wind whipped through the courtyard, carrying the distant echo of footsteps and bark, a sound that made her chest tighten. Her German shepherd, Titan, waited just beyond the walls, his ears flicking at every noise, sensing her distress from yards away. Her breathing was shallow, her chest rising and falling like a wounded bird's. The guards didn't notice the tremor in her fingers or the silent tears tracing the lines of dirt and bruises on her face. She had asked, pleaded, to see Titan one last time before the execution scheduled in 3 hours. No one had expected the prison warden to allow it, but somehow, a hesitant nod had been given. Mara's lips moved silently, whispering his name. The dog's eyes, dark and intelligent, met hers through the reinforced glass. There was a flicker of understanding there, a spark that seemed to pierce through the sterile metal walls. Titan's hackles rose slightly as if he knew what was coming, and he was ready to do something no one in the room could imagine. She remembered the day they met 5 years ago, a scrappy pup running wild in the abandoned streets of New Orleans. She had been a young military operative then, sent to a covert mission in the city, and Titan had been a stray with wounds and scars no one had bothered to tend. Something clicked instantly, an unspoken bond that felt like destiny. They had trained together, run missions together, saved each other countless times. Titan wasn't just a dog, he was her partner, her protector, her family. Now, facing the imminent threat of death, Mara felt an unbearable knot of fear and hope twist together inside her. Guards muttered behind their masks, shuffling papers and checking weapons, their faces indifferent. None of them had any idea the bond between her and Titan was something more than obedience. Titan had a mind of his own. He understood loyalty, danger, and justice better than any human in this cold place. As the warden's heavy boots approached, Mara's pulse quickened. Titan barked sharply, a warning that rattled the walls, echoing like a gunshot. The guards tensed, glancing nervously at the window. Mara whispered, "Stay close. Don't let them break you." Her voice was a fragile thread, but Titan's response was immediate. He shifted, pacing with precision, muscles coiled like springs ready to act. There was a promise in his gaze. No matter what, he would not let her go without a fight. And then it happened. The warden opened the door just slightly, and in that instant Titan made his move. The glass between them vibrated with the force of a single, decisive leap. A move so sudden and impossible it seemed unreal. Guards shouted, guns raised, but the moment had already cracked the rhythm of the morning, shattered the expected order. Mara's heart pounded in her chest, hope and fear colliding in a chaotic drumbeat. For the first time in hours, Mara dared to believe that the impossible might just be possible. The streets of New Orleans had never felt safe to Mara, not even during daylight. Narrow alleys reeked of damp garbage and gasoline, the air thick with the hum of distant traffic and whispered danger. She was a young military operative then, barely 25, tasked with a covert reconnaissance mission. Her target was a small arms dealer hiding in a rundown warehouse near the docks, but the city's rhythm held secrets of its own. And it was in one of those secrets that she found Titan. The first time she saw him, he was nothing more than a scrappy black and tan puppy with fur matted by dirt and scratches running along his tiny legs. He had been cornered by a gang of older strays, his little teeth bared in defiance. Mara knelt slowly, hands outstretched, sensing the sharp tension in his body. For a moment, the city's chaos seemed to fade, leaving only the connection between them. Titan's eyes, wide and wary, met hers. Something clicked. It wasn't just pity, it was recognition. He understood danger, survival, and the rare spark of trust. Mara whispered, "You're coming with me. You're safe now." The weeks that followed were rigorous. Mara trained him, slowly transforming the streetwise stray into a disciplined, intelligent partner. Every morning, she ran him through obedience drills in the quiet of abandoned warehouses, teaching him to respond to commands with precision. Every night, she fed him scraps, brushed his fur, and told him stories of missions, of honor, of loyalty. Titan absorbed it all, his bond with Mara growing stronger than she had ever imagined possible. By the time he was a year old, he was not just a dog. He was a soldier in his own right, keen, fearless, and fiercely loyal. Their first mission together had been a revelation. Mara and Titan had been tasked with intercepting a black market arms exchange near the Mississippi River. Bullets had flown, men had fallen, and through the chaos, Titan had acted instinctively, diving into the fray, protecting Mara, retrieving crucial intel that would have otherwise been lost. In that moment, she realized the bond between them was something no training manual could explain. Titan didn't just follow orders. He anticipated danger, made decisions, and saved lives with a courage that was almost human. But their partnership was not without sacrifice. Mara had watched Titan suffer injuries she could barely treat in the field, had stayed awake for nights waiting for him to recover, whispering reassurances while the city slept unaware. Titan, in turn, had learned to read her every gesture, her hesitation, her fear, her unspoken commands. They were two halves of the same whole, bound by survival and trust. Every mission reinforced that bond, every near-death experience forged it stronger. Outside the prison walls, the wind picked up, rattling the high fences and bringing Mara back to the present. Titan's ears twitched at the sound, every muscle coiled in anticipation. He remembered the missions, the countless times they had escaped impossible odds, and now he knew his greatest test had arrived. Mara's execution loomed, a final act that no training could prepare her for, but Titan's instincts were unmatched. She had always known he would fight for her, but now, standing on the edge of death, she hoped he remembered every lesson, every shared heartbeat in those dark streets. Titan's gaze met hers again, unwavering. In that moment she understood. He didn't just love her. He would sacrifice everything, even his own life, to protect hers. And as the warden's heavy boots approached, heralding the countdown to her fate, Mara felt a surge of hope she hadn't dared to feel in hours. Titan was ready. She could feel it in every tense line of his body, every flick of his tail. The impossible might be coming true. The heavy iron door clanged shut behind the warden, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the cold, sterile hallway. Mara's wrists ached where the shackles dug into her skin, but her eyes never left Titan, who stood just beyond the reinforced glass, muscles taut, eyes burning with focus. The guards whispered among themselves, unaware that the bond between her and the German shepherd was more than obedience, it was a weapon in itself. Every subtle movement Titan made spoke volumes. Crouching low, shifting his weight, a low growl rumbling in his chest. Mara understood immediately, he was preparing to act. Her stomach twisted with a cocktail of fear and hope. She had spent her life in high-stakes situations, but nothing had felt like this. The unrelenting tick of the clock toward her execution, the sterile walls pressing in like a cage, the cold eyes of men who saw her as nothing more than a condemned prisoner. And yet, Titan's presence shifted the air. He had always sensed danger before it happened, anticipated attacks before anyone could react. Now he waited for the signal Mara hadn't even given him yet. The warden stepped closer, a thick man with a graying beard and a permanent scowl etched into his weathered face. "Last chance," he said, voice low but carrying authority. "Anything to say before?" He didn't finish the sentence, but the meaning was clear. Mara swallowed hard. She wanted to speak, to plead, to bargain, but no words came. All she could do was meet Titan's gaze, a silent understanding passing between them. Survive. A guard shifted, tightening his grip on the baton. Another adjusted his holstered pistol, the metal glinting under the fluorescent lights. They thought control was entirely in their hands, that fear was theirs to command. But Titan knew differently. Mara had trained him through chaos, taught him precision, the power of timing, the art of striking when least expected. One misstep from them, one slight distraction, and Titan could turn the tables in a heartbeat. Suddenly, a faint whistle broke the tense silence. It was barely audible, yet enough for Titan to respond. In a flash, he lunged, smashing into the glass panel near the floor with a force that rattled the walls. Guards shouted in surprise, stumbling back. Mara's heart leapt. He wasn't just a dog anymore. He was a force of nature, a living weapon of loyalty and instinct. The first crack in the prison's iron grip had formed, and it widened with every second. The warden barked orders, panic creeping into his tone. Guns were drawn, batons raised, but the chaos had already begun. Titan moved like a shadow, agile and unstoppable, his growls vibrating through the concrete. Mara's own adrenaline surged. Despite her shackles, she felt the surge of hope and determination. She could almost see the past missions flash in her mind, the way Titan had saved her before, instinctively, without hesitation. This was their final mission together, and neither would falter. One guard lunged toward Titan, but the German shepherd sidestepped, teeth snapping dangerously close. Another swung his baton, and Titan dodged, pivoting with impossible precision. Mara could hardly breathe, caught between fear for him and awe at his power. Every muscle in her body tensed, ready to move if only she could break free. She whispered under her breath, "Hold. Be ready. Wait for it." The room seemed to shrink, the fluorescent lights casting sharp, chaotic shadows, amplifying every movement, every heartbeat. Then, with a single calculated surge, Titan propelled himself toward the nearest guard, knocking him into the wall. The metallic clang echoed through the corridor. The other guards froze for a split second, enough time for Mara to plan her next move, enough time for hope to ignite a spark of rebellion against the certainty of death. Outside the walls, the wind howled, carrying distant sirens and the low growl of Titan's defiance. Mara's pulse raced. They had crossed the threshold into chaos. The first move had been made. Years before she had ever met Titan, Mara Solverson had been forged in fire. The military didn't just train soldiers. It broke them down, rebuilt them, and tested their limits until only the sharpest, most resilient survived. Mara had learned early on that survival required more than skill. It demanded intuition, discipline, and a willingness to make impossible choices. In a small, windowless training facility in Fort Bragg, she had spent countless nights crawling through mud, dodging live-fire simulations, her mind racing as much as her body. Every mistake could have been fatal, every hesitation a liability. It was there she discovered the importance of partnership. In one grueling exercise, she had been paired with a fellow operative, an older man named Victor, whose experience was unmatched. He taught her that trust was not given, it was earned every second in the smallest gestures. A nod, a glance, even the subtle shift of a body could communicate life or death. Mara had learned to read his intentions before he spoke, anticipating his movements, mirroring his strategies. That discipline became second nature, a rhythm her body recognized even under extreme stress. When she first encountered Titan, it was instinct that guided her. She had seen potential in the little street dog, not just loyalty but intelligence, courage, the rare ability to sense danger before it arrived. That instinctive recognition reminded her of those nights with Victor, crawling through obstacles, surviving because they trusted each other without words. Titan, she realized, could be more than a companion. He could be her partner in the truest sense, an extension of her senses, her body, her will. Over the following months, Mara honed Titan's instincts as rigorously as her own. Every command had a purpose, every maneuver a lesson in survival. She pushed him to the edge of exhaustion, testing obedience, resilience, and instinct. They moved through urban landscapes, abandoned factories, riverside docks, learning to navigate shadows and light, danger and escape. Mara saw in Titan a reflection of her own grit, a raw determination that mirrored her inner fire. Together, they were unstoppable, a force forged by necessity and trust. The memory of one mission in particular lingered in Mara's mind as she sat shackled in the prison. A nighttime infiltration of a hostile compound, a labyrinth of corridors and guards, where failure meant capture or death. She had been trapped in a corner, disoriented and outnumbered, when Titan had acted without hesitation. Leaping, barking, disrupting the enemy's formation, he had cleared a path for her escape. In that moment, Mara realized that Titan's loyalty wasn't just about protection. It was about partnership, decision-making, and courage. He was a soldier in his own right and she owed him everything. Now, years later, facing the sterile certainty of the execution chamber, Mara drew strength from those memories. Every lesson, every mission, every shared heartbeat had led to this moment. Titan's eyes met hers again through the reinforced glass, and she understood that instinct, loyalty, and preparation were converging. He would not fail her. The warden's voice interrupted her thoughts, booming down the hallway. "Time's almost up. Move her." The guards approached with mechanical precision, unaware that the room was about to erupt into chaos. Titan's growl deepened, resonating through the walls, a warning and a promise. Mara's fingers flexed in the shackles, every fiber of her being pulsed with anticipation. They had survived impossible odds before and somehow they would survive this. Outside, the morning wind carried an eerie stillness. Titan's stance was deliberate, muscles coiled, eyes locked on the approaching threat. Mara whispered under her breath, "This is it. Remember everything." She could feel the rhythm of their shared history, the missions, the training, the trust, aligning like a heartbeat. The impossible was no longer a distant hope. It was imminent. And in the cold fluorescent light, the first real spark of rebellion against her fate ignited. The corridor shook with tension. Mara's heart pounded in rhythm with Titan's growls, the sound vibrating through the reinforced walls like a drumbeat of impending chaos. The guards had begun to notice the unnatural intensity of the German shepherd, but none of them understood the depth of his bond with Mara or the instincts guiding every calculated move. Every shift of his weight, every flick of his ears, was a message: patience. Strike only when necessary. Survival is everything. The warden barked another order, voice sharp and commanding, but Titan had already decided the moment had arrived. With a blur of motion, he lunged forward, smashing into the nearest guard. The impact sent the man stumbling into the wall, his baton clattering across the floor. Shouts erupted, echoing down the narrow hallway. Mara's pulse surged, adrenaline overriding pain in her wrists. She flexed her fingers in the shackles, already plotting her next move. Titan's action had shifted the dynamic entirely. Chaos unfolded like a controlled storm. One guard raised a pistol, aiming toward the glass separating Mara and Titan. Before he could pull the trigger, Titan barked, a sharp, commanding sound that froze the man in place. He instinctively lowered the weapon, unsure of what had just occurred. Mara's breath caught in her throat, a mix of fear and awe. Every mission, every lesson, every bond with Titan had led to this moment. And yet, the danger was far from over. A second guard lunged at Titan, baton swinging with reckless force. Titan twisted midair, muscles rippling, and countered with a precision strike, knocking the guard off balance. Mara's eyes followed every movement, calculating possibilities, anticipating openings. Years of military training surged through her memory, silent commands, angles, timing. Titan was the perfect extension of her instincts. Together they were unstoppable. Then Mara saw an opening. The lock on the shackle holding her wrists was flawed, rusted in a specific corner from years of neglect. She shifted her weight subtly, applying pressure as Titan created a diversion. The guard's attention was consumed entirely by the German shepherd's relentless, strategic assault. One by one they faltered, surprised by his intelligence, unprepared for the ferocity of his loyalty. Mara worked the lock, muscles straining, and within moments the chain gave way. Freedom, though incomplete, had arrived. Titan barked again, a signal that Mara had been waiting for. She scrambled to her feet, knees weak but determination strong. Together they moved as one, a coordinated force honed by years of training, shared danger, and unwavering trust. The warden screamed, an explosion of panic and disbelief, but Mara's focus was razor-sharp. Every breath, every heartbeat was synchronized with Titan's movements. They were no longer merely surviving, they were fighting with purpose. The first guard regained his footing, charging at Mara with a wild swing of his baton. She ducked, pivoted, and delivered a precise strike learned from countless drills, sending him sprawling to the floor. Titan snapped, teeth glinting in the fluorescent light, blocking another guard from reaching her. The corridor had become a battlefield, every shadow a potential threat, every movement a life-or-death decision. Mara's chest burned with exertion, but her resolve only strengthened. Outside the prison walls, the wind howled through the courtyard, carrying the faint scent of freedom. Sirens wailed in the distance, a reminder that their window was limited. Mara knew they had only minutes before reinforcements arrived. Titan's eyes met hers, unwavering and filled with understanding. They were partners, warriors, bound by trust stronger than any chain. Together they would face whatever came next. And in that moment, amidst chaos and fear, Mara allowed herself a single thought: perhaps the impossible wasn't impossible after all. The metallic clang of the last guard hitting the floor echoed through the corridor like a gunshot, and Mara's pulse raced as she and Titan advanced cautiously. Every corner, every doorway, every shadow was a potential trap. The fluorescent lights flickered above, casting jagged, trembling shadows that made the sterile walls feel alive. Titan moved ahead, low and silent, ears twitching, every step calculated. Mara's hands were free now, but her body still carried the weight of exhaustion, bruises, and tension. She trusted Titan to read the danger before she did. Their path was narrow, flanked by locked doors and barred windows. Mara's mind raced, recalling blueprints she had memorized during a covert operation: routes, emergency exits, guard rotations. Years of training converged into this single moment: precision, instinct, and timing. Titan paused at an intersection, sniffing the air, muscles coiled like springs. Mara leaned close, whispering, "Left." Quick, silent. He obeyed instantly, slipping through the shadows with the grace of a predator. The warden's shouts echoed behind them, growing more frantic with each passing second. Mara could hear reinforcements approaching, boots pounding the hallways, radios crackling commands. Every second counted. Titan's growl vibrated through her chest, a steady drum of warning and resolve. She had never felt fear and exhilaration mix so intensely, the adrenaline, the danger, the desperate hope. They were alive, and survival depended on every split-second decision. A guard rounded the corner ahead, his flashlight sweeping through the corridor. Mara ducked behind a metal support beam, heart hammering, as Titan flattened himself against the floor. The light passed just inches above them. Time slowed. She could feel the rhythm of the guard's steps, the rise and fall of his chest, the faint scent of sweat and fear. Titan leapt, silent and precise, knocking the flashlight from the man's hand. Darkness swallowed the guard's figure as he stumbled back, cursing. Mara exhaled silently, adrenaline mixing with relief. The hallway opened into a small courtyard, the morning sun glinting off high fences topped with barbed wire. Mara's eyes scanned for an exit route. A service gate, barely noticeable, hung slightly ajar. Titan dashed ahead, tail low, ears back, scouting the area. Mara followed, keeping close behind. The sirens outside were louder now, vehicles pulling into the compound. Every second was precious. She had trained for high-risk infiltration, but this was different. This was survival with a living, breathing partner who could anticipate danger in ways no human could. Suddenly, a security camera swiveled, its red light slicing across the courtyard. Mara froze, calculating the timing. Titan barked once, sharply, a signal she understood. She sprinted, low and swift, rolling behind a stack of crates, and Titan was there, covering her escape with instinctive precision. A guard appeared at the far gate, baton in hand, but Titan launched himself forward, teeth snapping, forcing the man to retreat. Mara ran through the gate, her lungs burning, legs aching, but adrenaline carrying her forward. Outside the prison walls, the wind was colder now, cutting through her jacket like a knife. She could see the streets beyond, the first stretch of freedom within reach. Titan ran beside her, low and fast, eyes scanning for danger. For the first time in hours, Mara allowed herself a fleeting smile, the memory of their shared past and the countless missions flashing through her mind. They had faced impossible odds before and they had survived. But Mara knew the hardest part was still ahead. The city beyond was teeming with danger, surveillance and unknown threats. Every step could be the last. Titan's growl deepened, a reminder that the fight wasn't over yet. Mara's mind sharpened, focus intensifying. Together they would navigate the chaos, survive the hunt and face whatever came next. The streets beyond the prison were chaotic, filled with the distant roar of sirens and the low hum of patrol vehicles. Mara kept her body low, weaving between abandoned cars and shadowed alleyways, Titan moving silently beside her, ears pricked, muscles coiled for action. Every flicker of light from a street lamp became a potential threat, every shadow a hiding place for danger. They were being hunted, and the hunters were well-trained, methodical, and relentless. Mara's lungs burned, but she forced herself to stay calm. Panic would be deadly. Her hands brushed against the worn leather of her jacket, fingers tracing the small knife she had managed to conceal during transport. Years of field experience screamed at her to stay one step ahead, to anticipate the moves of those pursuing her. Titan's gaze mirrored her own focus, alert, calculating, ready. He had been through countless missions with her, instinctively knowing what to do when the odds were stacked impossibly high. From a side alley, a spotlight swept across the street, forcing Mara and Titan to duck behind a dumpster. The light lingered, and she could hear the shuffle of boots, the murmur of guards coordinating over radios. Titan growled low, a sound that vibrated through Mara's chest. He was warning her, they were close. The bond they shared, built over years of training and trust, allowed them to move as one. She whispered, "Stay with me," and he tightened his pace, matching her every step. Suddenly, a patrol car rounded the corner, tires squealing on the wet pavement. Mara pressed herself against the wall, Titan flattened beside her. Time slowed as the vehicle's headlights swept past, and for a heartbeat, they were invisible. Then, without hesitation, Titan darted forward, creating a distraction. He barked, snapped, and circled the patrol car, forcing the driver to slam the brakes and swerve. Mara seized the moment, sprinting down the opposite alley, heart hammering, adrenaline surging. They moved like ghosts through the city, silent, precise, unpredictable. Every street and alley became a chessboard, every turn a calculated risk. Mara could feel the tension mounting, the weight of impending capture pressing down, but she also felt the extraordinary power of their bond. Titan anticipated danger before she did, acted before she even thought. Together they were more than human and dog, they were a single, lethal unit forged by survival and loyalty. A sudden shout split the night air. Mara froze. Guards had spotted her silhouette. They were closing in from both sides. Titan barked sharply, launching into action. He leapt at one guard, knocking him off balance, teeth snapping inches from the man's arm. Another guard raised his weapon, but Mara was already rolling behind a stack of crates, dagger in hand, ready to disarm anyone foolish enough to approach. The chase had become a ballet of violence and instinct, precise movements executed with split-second timing. Through it all, Mara's mind raced with contingencies. She remembered rooftop routes from previous surveillance, emergency extraction points she had scouted months earlier. Titan was already moving toward them, scanning, calculating. Every breath, every heartbeat, every movement aligned perfectly. The city had become their battlefield, and survival was the only objective. Finally, a gap appeared in the pursuit, a narrow alley leading to an abandoned freight yard. Mara's pulse leapt. This was their chance. Titan ran ahead, ears back, muscles taut, leading the way. She followed, weaving through shadows and rusting containers, adrenaline sharpening her focus. Freedom was close, tantalizingly close, but the danger was far from over. Every step forward carried the weight of consequence, and the hunters were relentless. As they reached the edge of the yard, Mara glanced at Titan. His eyes met hers, unwavering and full of determination. No words were needed. They had survived impossible odds before. They would survive this. The abandoned freight yard was silent except for the distant sirens and the low hum of city life beyond the fences. Rusted containers loomed like monolithic shadows, casting the perfect maze for a desperate escape, or a deadly trap. Mara crouched low behind one of the containers, Titan at her side, every muscle coiled, every sense on high alert. The pursuit had tightened. Guards were closing in, and she knew their next move could decide life or death. From above, a dim spotlight swept across the yard. Mara's heart raced. They were visible now, cornered, with no obvious path forward. Titan's ears flicked, tail low, growl rolling deep in his chest. Mara's fingers tightened around the handle of her knife, but she realized words would be meaningless. This was instinct, honed by years of training and countless missions. Titan moved first, slinking along the shadows like a predator, his eyes scanning, calculating, ready to strike. Mara mirrored him, silent and lethal. The first guard stepped into the open, baton raised, moving cautiously. Titan lunged with surgical precision, knocking him into a stack of metal barrels. The echo of the crash reverberated through the yard. Mara sprinted forward, leveraging the chaos, her knife flashing in the dim light. The second guard fired a warning shot, missing her by inches. Titan snapped, diving between her and the threat, teeth bared, a shield of loyalty and raw power. Every movement was choreographed instinctively. Mara had trained for urban warfare, Titan had trained with her, but nothing compared to this. No drills, no simulations, just raw survival. She felt the rhythm of their combined force. Titan's growl, her heartbeat, the shouts of guards, the distant wail of sirens. It all synced into a pulse of adrenaline and determination. Each guard who advanced was met with precise force, Titan and Mara moving as a single entity, anticipation and reaction fused seamlessly. A small opening appeared. A narrow gap between two containers leading to a service exit Mara had memorized months ago. She gestured subtly to Titan, and he understood immediately. Together they moved, low and fast, a shadow through the debris-laden yard. One guard blocked the path. Titan sprang, teeth snapping, jaws clamping onto the man's arm. Mara used the distraction to disarm another, sending him sprawling to the ground. Every second brought them closer to freedom, every heartbeat a gamble. The warden appeared at the far end of the yard, face twisted in fury and disbelief. Mara met his gaze for the first time in hours, unshackled, bloodied, yet unwavering. Titan growled, a warning, and the warden hesitated. That moment of doubt was all Mara needed. She dashed toward the exit, Titan beside her, a blur of movement and determination. The sirens grew louder, but so did the sound of possibility, the taste of freedom, close enough to almost touch. Mara reached the service gate, barely open, and with Titan at her side, pushed it just wide enough to slip through. Guards lunged, shouting, but the bond between woman and dog was unstoppable. Titan intercepted with unmatched precision, knocking aside anyone foolish enough to block them. Mara sprinted down the alley beyond the yard, adrenaline burning, lungs on fire, but hope, raw, unshakable, guiding every step. The city spread before them, streets bathed in early morning light. Titan slowed, glancing back at Mara, ensuring she followed. They were battered, exhausted, but alive. The warden's voice faded into the distance, replaced by the sounds of freedom. the hum of traffic, birds, the whisper of wind. Mara knelt, pressing a hand to Titan's head, her tears wetting his fur. "We made it," she whispered, voice trembling yet strong. For the first time in hours, Mara allowed herself to breathe freely. They had faced impossible odds, survived against a relentless force, and emerged together. Titan wagged his tail slightly, eyes bright, a living testament to loyalty, courage, and the unbreakable bond between human and companion. The nightmare of the prison, the execution, the chase, all of it was behind them. And yet, Mara knew one truth above all. Nothing could ever break the connection they shared. The sun had climbed higher now, casting harsh light across the deserted industrial district where Mara and Titan had emerged. The warden and his remaining guards had caught up, or so they thought. Mara pressed herself against the side of a rusted warehouse. Titan crouched low beside her, muscles coiled like springs. Every sense was alive: the metallic scent of the city, the distant hum of traffic, the subtle shuffle of boots on concrete. They were outnumbered but never outmatched. The warden's voice cut through the air, sharp and commanding. "Stop them. Now." His rage was palpable, but he underestimated the bond between Mara and her companion. Titan's ears flicked, his growl rolling low, warning Mara, "Anticipate, act, survive." She nodded subtly, knowing he understood. Years of missions, countless life-or-death scenarios, had taught them to move as one. And now they were about to turn the tables completely. The first guard lunged, baton raised. Titan struck first, teeth flashing, knocking him into the wall. Mara followed instantly, her movements precise, honed by experience and instinct. Another guard aimed a firearm, but Titan intercepted, launching himself at the man, jaws snapping, forcing the weapon to clatter harmlessly to the ground. Mara seized the moment, spinning, disarming the second guard with swift efficiency. Each strike, each dodge, was a symphony of training and raw instinct. The warden, realizing his men were no longer a threat, drew a handgun himself. Mara froze briefly as he aimed at Titan. Time slowed. Titan's eyes met hers, unwavering, full of trust and unspoken command. "Protect her." In a heartbeat, Mara lunged, throwing her body into the warden's line of fire, knocking him off balance. Titan sprang, teeth flashing, knocking the warden's weapon away. The man stumbled backward, crashing into a stack of crates. For the first time, Mara realized that they had not just survived. They had dominated the moment, turning fear into power. Breathing hard, bruised and battered, Mara looked around. The remaining guards were incapacitated, retreating, or immobilized. Titan stood proudly beside her, chest heaving, fur matted with sweat and grime. Their eyes met, a shared understanding passing silently between them. They had survived the impossible. Mara's pulse slowed slightly, replaced by the adrenaline-fueled clarity of victory. In the distance, the first signs of law enforcement sirens approached. Not the prison guards but actual authorities called in to investigate the chaos. Mara knew their window for escape was narrowing. She grabbed Titan's collar, whispering, "Let's move. One last stretch." Together, they slipped through the alleyways, moving like shadows against the rising sun, each step bringing them closer to freedom. Finally, they reached a quiet park on the outskirts of the city. Mara sank to her knees, exhausted, and Titan immediately pressed against her, nuzzling her shoulder, his warmth grounding her after the chaos. Tears streaked her dirt-smudged face as she whispered, "We made it. You saved me." Titan rested his head in her lap, calm now, the tension of the night melting away. The world was still dangerous, still unpredictable, but for the first time, Mara felt the profound weight of relief and triumph. The warden's threats, the prison walls, the relentless pursuit, all of it seemed like a distant nightmare. Mara knew that nothing could ever sever the bond she shared with Titan. He was more than a companion. He was family, protector, and partner in a life that demanded courage, loyalty, and sacrifice. Together, they had faced impossible odds, survived the darkest hours, and emerged victorious. Mara looked into Titan's eyes and smiled through tears. "You're my hero," she whispered. Titan wagged his tail slightly, eyes shining with unwavering devotion. In that moment, she knew the impossible had been achieved, not by luck, not by chance, but by trust, training, and an unbreakable bond. The morning sun bathed the city in gold as Mara and Titan finally emerged from the labyrinth of alleyways into open streets. Every step felt surreal, freedom, tangible and warm, wrapped around her like a long-lost embrace. The chaos of the night, the prison, the chase, and the warden's wrath seemed almost unreal now, leaving behind only exhaustion, relief, and a profound gratitude. Titan trotted beside her, head held high, muscles relaxed but alert, the embodiment of unwavering loyalty. Mara paused at a small park, its benches empty and bathed in sunlight. She sank to the ground, knees scraping against gravel, lungs heaving. Titan immediately pressed against her, nose nudging her hand, eyes soft and understanding. For the first time in hours she allowed herself to cry, not from fear but from the overwhelming weight of survival, the recognition that they had both endured the impossible. Every bruise, every cut, every desperate thought now paled beside the bond that had carried them through. The sound of approaching vehicles drew her attention. Law enforcement, alerted by the chaos at the prison, arrived to secure the area. Mara stood slowly, brushing dirt and sweat from her jacket, and explained everything: the warden's illegal actions, the guard's brutality, and the miraculous, instinctive actions of Titan that had saved her life. Officers listened, some shaking their heads in disbelief, clearly impressed by both her courage and the dog's extraordinary intelligence. She felt a quiet vindication, knowing that justice would follow for those who had tried to take her life. A detective, tall and sharp-eyed, approached cautiously, kneeling to meet Titan at eye level. "I've never seen a dog work like that," he admitted, voice tinged with awe. Titan wagged his tail slightly, ears twitching, his presence calm but alert. Mara smiled, ruffling his fur. "He's more than a dog," she said simply. "He's family. He saved my life." As the authorities processed the situation, Mara allowed herself a moment to breathe deeply, feeling the weight of fear and tension melt away. The city around her was waking, unaware of the ordeal that had just unfolded in its shadowed corners. The streets, once threatening and suffocating, now felt like a canvas of possibility, a future waiting to be claimed. She looked down at Titan, her partner, her guardian, her hero, and whispered, "We're free. Together." Later, as they walked away from the park, Titan at her side, Mara reflected on the lessons carved into every moment of their ordeal. Courage was more than facing danger, it was trusting in those who loved you even when the odds seemed impossible. Loyalty wasn't about obedience, it was about shared purpose, instinct, and sacrifice. And survival wasn't merely endurance, it was a dance of trust, training, and unshakable determination. Mara knew the world would continue to test her as it always had, but with Titan she had learned the ultimate truth: no matter the darkness ahead, she would never face it alone. The bond between them had transformed fear into action, desperation into triumph, and a death sentence into liberation. Every step forward was a testament to their shared strength. As they reached the outskirts of the city, the skyline bathed in the soft glow of late morning, Mara paused. She looked out at the horizon, feeling the warmth of the sun on her face and Titan's steady presence beside her. Tears filled her eyes once more, this time of gratitude and hope. She knelt, holding his head gently, and said, "You changed everything, Titan. You saved me, and nothing will ever be the same again." Titan nudged her hand, tail wagging, eyes reflecting the depth of their bond. In that quiet moment the world seemed vast, full of possibilities, but one truth remained eternal: they had survived the impossible together. And in the light of that morning, Mara understood that freedom, courage, and love were intertwined, and that some bonds were unbreakable no matter what the world threw at them. The city stretched ahead, open and alive, as Mara and Titan walked side by side, moving into a future only they could navigate.